The late autumn sun poured soft gold over the courthouse steps, turning the old stone into something almost magical. Tyler Matthews sat there, toolbox beside him, the faint hum of a job well done still in his hands. He had just repaired the ancient heating system inside, a thankless task, but one he took quiet pride in. At 34, Tyler's hands were calloused from years of honest work. The kind of hands that could fix almost anything except maybe his own loneliness. Still, he carried a calm warmth about him, the kind that made people trust him without knowing why. He was about to leave when a small, trembling voice broke through the crisp air. "Excuse me, mister. Can you help me?" Tyler looked down. There, at the bottom of the steps, stood a little girl no older than 4. She wore a soft blue sweater and a pink knitted hat with a fuzzy pom-pom that bounced when she moved. In her tiny hands was a worn teddy bear, its ear half torn but loved all the same. Her cheeks were pale, but her eyes, bright, curious, and full of something older than her years, met his with a quiet plea. "Hey there, sweetheart," Tyler said softly, setting his toolbox aside. "I'm Tyler. What's your name?" "I'm Sophie," she replied, her voice delicate but steady. "I live up there with my grandma, but the elevator's broken again." Tyler followed her finger to the tall apartment building next to the courthouse. He knew that place. It creaked, groaned, and aged worse every winter. The elevator was a constant headache, one he'd patched up more times than he could count. "That's a lot of steps for little legs like yours," he said with a gentle smile. Sophie nodded gravely, clutching her teddy tighter. Then, with surprising seriousness, she looked him straight in the eye. "Mr. Tyler, if you carry me up the stairs," she whispered, "I'll tell you a secret. A very important one." Tyler blinked, a little caught off guard. There was something hauntingly wise about the way she said it, as if the secret wasn't childish at all. "Sophie," he said, crouching down so his eyes met hers, "I'd be happy to help you get home. You don't have to give me anything in return." But Sophie shook her head firmly, her pom-pom bobbing. "No. Grandma says when someone helps you, you have to give something back. And my secret, it's really special." Something in her tone made Tyler's chest tighten. He didn't know it yet, but that special secret would change everything. Tyler studied the little girl's face, the furrowed brow, the spark of determination far too mature for her small frame. Something about her stirred an ache deep inside him. She reminded him of his own daughter, the same stubborn kindness, the same innocent honesty that could melt the hardest heart. A daughter he hadn't seen in 2 years, living miles away with her mother. "All right, Sophie," Tyler said finally, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "I accept your offer." He picked up his toolbox with one hand and carefully scooped Sophie into his other arm. She was light as a feather, her tiny arms wrapping around his neck without hesitation. That simple act of trust caught him off guard. It had been a long time since anyone held on to him like that. As they climbed the narrow staircase, Sophie filled the silence with small, bright observations. "That's Mrs. Chen's window," she said, pointing at a ledge crowded with colorful pots. "She talks to her flowers every morning." Tyler chuckled softly. "And do they talk back?" "Sometimes," Sophie said with a grin, "but only if you listen carefully." 2 flights up, she pointed again. "That door belongs to Mr. Peterson. He plays his violin every night. Grandma says the music helps him remember his wife." Each word painted a picture of the lives inside that old building. Fragile, ordinary, but beautiful in their own way. "You seem to know everyone here," Tyler said, a little amazed. "Grandma says it's important to notice people," Sophie replied matter-of-factly. "Everyone has a story worth knowing." When they finally reached the 4th floor, she pointed toward a door marked 4B. Before they could even knock, It swung open. A woman in her 70s stood there, silver hair pulled back neatly, eyes full of worry and relief. "Sophie!" "There you are," she breathed, her voice trembling slightly. Then her gaze met Tyler's. "Oh, thank heavens." "And you are?" "Tyler Matthews," he said, setting Sophie gently down. "I gave Sophie a ride up the stairs." "Seems like your elevator's given up again." The woman smiled gratefully. "That's very kind of you." "I'm Eleanor, her grandmother. She's been a bit unwell lately." "The stairs can be a challenge." Tyler nodded with understanding. "I can imagine." "She's a brave little one." Before he could say more, Sophie tugged on his sleeve. "Mr. Tyler, remember what I promised." He knelt to her level, smiling. "Of course I do." "So what's your secret, Sophie?" Sophie looked up at her grandmother, who gave her a gentle nod. Then the little girl leaned in close, her voice barely above a whisper. "The secret," she said solemnly, "is that grown-ups forget the most important thing." Tyler frowned slightly. "And what's that?" Sophie's big brown eyes glimmered with something ancient and pure. "They forget that love isn't something you keep. It's something you give away. And the more you give away, the more you have." The words hung in the air like a quiet bell. Tyler felt something loosen in his chest, something he didn't even know he'd been holding on to. This tiny, fragile girl, fighting her own battles, had just spoken a truth he hadn't realized he'd forgotten. Tyler could only stare at the little girl, amazed by the depth of her words. That kind of wisdom, simple yet profound, was something most adults spent their whole lives trying to grasp. "Where did you learn that, Sophie?" he asked softly. "From being sick," she said matter-of-fact, as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world. "When you're sick, people show you love in so many ways. Grandma takes care of me every day. The doctor's always gentle. And even strangers like you help me up the stairs. That's how I know. Love grows when you share it." Eleanor, standing nearby, placed a tender hand on her granddaughter's shoulder. "She's been teaching me the same thing," she said quietly. Even when she's not feeling well, she still looks for ways to help others, always thinking about someone else before herself. Tyler felt his throat tighten. He didn't know what kind of illness Sophie was facing, but her calm acceptance, her grace, humbled him. In the days that followed, he couldn't shake her words. Love grows when you share it. They echoed in his mind while he worked, while he ate, even while he sat alone in his small apartment at night. So he started showing up again, first to check on the elevator, then just to visit. Each time he brought something small, a new light bulb, a story from work, a silly joke to make Sophie laugh. Slowly, their visits became part of his routine, part of his life. One afternoon, Sophie was having a rough day. She looked pale and fragile, curled up on the couch beneath a warm blanket. But when she saw Tyler step through the door, her whole face lit up. "Tyler! I've been waiting for you," she said with a tired but joyful grin. "Grandma made cookies, and I saved you 3. Tyler laughed and sat beside her, accepting a cookie from the small plate she held out. "You're spoiling me, kiddo." They ate together, crumbs scattered across the table, sunlight spilling through the lace curtains. Tyler noticed how, even on her worst days, Sophie still found ways to care. She asked about his work, remembered every story he'd ever told her, and somehow always made him feel lighter when she was the one fighting a battle. "Sophie," he said one afternoon as they pieced together a jigsaw puzzle, "you've taught me something really important." "What's that?" she asked, glancing up at him with those same bright eyes. "You've shown me that not everything can be fixed with tools," he said, his voice warm but thick with emotion. "Sometimes the best repairs happen when we fix each other's hearts. With kindness." Sophie smiled. That radiant, fearless smile that had captured him the first day they met. "That's exactly right, Tyler," she said softly. "And the wonderful thing is, When you fix someone else's heart, yours gets fixed too. 3 months later, a call came that made Tyler's heart race. Good news for once. Sophie's treatment had worked. She was getting stronger every day. To celebrate, Eleanor invited him over for dinner. The small apartment glowed with laughter, the smell of homemade stew, and a warmth that felt like family. As they sat around the tiny kitchen table, Sophie lifted her glass of milk high. "To Tyler," she said proudly, "the man who carried me up the stairs and learned my secret." Tyler raised his glass, smiling, though his throat tightened again, not with sadness, but with gratitude. Tyler looked across the small kitchen table at the remarkable little girl who had changed his heart more than any life lesson ever could. His voice trembled slightly as he raised his glass in return. "To Sophie," he said, smiling through the emotion in his chest, "who taught me that the richest people aren't the ones who have the most, but the ones who give the most." Eleanor's eyes glistened as she dabbed at a tear. "And to the family we've become," she added softly, "not through blood, but through love." The clink of their glasses was small, but it felt like the sound of something sacred, a bond sealed by kindness. Later that evening, as Tyler slipped on his jacket to leave, Sophie toddled over to him with a folded piece of paper in her hands. "I made this for you," she said proudly. Tyler unfolded it carefully. On the paper was a colorful drawing, 2 figures on a long staircase, a man carrying a little girl, surrounded by tiny red hearts. "This is us," Sophie explained with a shy grin. "Sharing love and making it grow." Tyler stared at the picture for a long moment, his throat thick. Then, with quiet reverence, he folded it and tucked it into his wallet. "This," he said, his voice low, "is something I'll keep with me forever." He bent down and hugged her gently. "Thank you, Sophie. Your secret, it changed everything." Sophie wrapped her tiny arms around his neck with surprising strength. "That's what secrets are for, Tyler," she whispered. "To make the world a little bit better." As he stepped outside, the evening light bathed the courthouse steps in the same golden glow as the day they met. Tyler paused halfway down, breathing in the crisp autumn air, feeling something inside him settle, a peace he hadn't known in years. He finally understood. Some encounters don't just cross your path. They change your direction entirely. Sometimes wisdom comes from the smallest voices, and the greatest gifts come wrapped in the simplest moments. A week later, the elevator in Sophie's building was finally fixed, but Tyler kept visiting anyway. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. He'd learned something far more lasting than how to repair a broken machine. Some connections aren't about convenience or obligation. They're about recognizing that at our core, we all need each other, and Sophie had been right all along. Love isn't something to hold on to tightly or save for later. It's something you give freely, again and again, trusting that in giving it away, both hearts become richer than before.